We have a an all-star cast here tonight, an ensemble cast, and it is the day after election night, November 2nd. I'm Kevin Hoare, Don Anderson, regular Wednesday guy, Sonny Danforth, also always on Wednesday, and then Oregon's Red Trickle, David Darnell himself, and we're gonna launch into it. We're gonna talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of November 8th, and of course it's election month, so we don't know the results of some of these, but there's a lot going on. So why don't we start out here with the just the general election results? We know, of course, that the Oregonian is one of the entities that's called the governor's race for Tina Kotek in a very, very narrow election race here. It's Tina Kotek stands at 46.2%, according to the Oregon Secretary of State's website, and 46.74%, and Christine Drazen at 43.74, so a 3 percentage point separation. And they usually call these races at the point where they look at the ballots that still have yet to be counted but have been received, and where those ballots are, Multnomah County, in the case of about 100,000 of them, and then by what percentage are those being won by one candidate or the other. Clackamas is another one that has a lot of outstanding ballots, and I guess what they've done is they've looked at that, and the Oregonian has concluded that they think that gap cannot be closed between Christine Drazen and Tina Kotek. By the way, Betsy Johnson at 8.68%, so 9% basically. And some counties, it looks like she might have taken more from Christine, but in other counties, probably more from Tina. Depends on what part of the state, particularly the home district for Betsy Johnson when she was a state senator. So Oregon's Red Trickle, I'll hand it to you first. What do you think about what's happened with the governor's race?
Well, I was told by a so-called prominent former Republican leader that Betsy Johnson was the only hope, but it doesn't seem like she's probably going to close the gap.
She conceded yesterday, right?
So yeah, at the beginning of the month probably would have been more appropriate. But one of the interesting things I saw looking at the numbers is about 11,000 people so far did not mark a candidate for governor. And about almost 30,000 people did not mark a candidate for senator. And one of the things probably the thing that ticks me off the most is there's 20,000 people who returned a ballot but did not mark anything on 114. So as we all know, 114 is that horribly bad, unconstitutional, effective ban on guns in the state of Oregon. And people didn't return a vote on that. But I think overall, I'm not sure that I'm surprised with the results. I mean, my early predictions, somebody asked me, and I did all the number crunching I could, and my percentages were a little bit off because I think I thought at the time that Betsy, given the amount of money that she had, would pull more. I thought she'd pull in the teens somewhere, and that put. I think I had Drazen and Kotek just neck and neck somewhere around 35 or 37%, whatever it was. But yeah, I don't think it's unexpected. I mean, we live in a state that's D plus 10. There's 300,000 more Democrats than there are Republicans. And although this was certainly our best shot in many years, given Betsy, I guess we just couldn't quite get over the hump.
Well, and anybody who had to spend any time on YouTube watching Tina Kotek basically take over YouTube with ad after ad after ad. Yeah. It was clear she was running for the governor of Multnomah County, and it was there was only two issues apparently that people care about in Multnomah County, according to Tina Kotek: abortion and January 6th.
Yeah,
and everything else. Don't worry your pretty little heads about that. And that was that was because she was trying to just get as many Democrats to come home and vote for her from the deep blue areas of the state. And it looks like in places like Multnomah and Lane County, it did work.
Right.
Did a little bit less well in Lane County than Kotech did, than Cape Brown did 4 years ago, but still, it was enough, right?
Yeah, best quote I heard. Well, I heard quite a few good quotes, but one of the best quotes I've heard so far regarding that is that apparently abortion is, apparently a bigger issue than all of us thought. But the quote was that miserable single women are ruining the country.
Well, and in a state where Roe versus Wade, the status of abortion under Roe versus Wade before it was overturned is already enshrined in Oregon law. It was a total nonsense issue, which I'm sorry that people are that gullible, but if somebody comes into your front yard and sets up a tent and starts pooping all over the place and throwing hypodermic needles, just remember, you fought hard for abortion that you already have in Oregon law. Good job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, so Suni, Umatilla was that's your home county. That was one of the counties that I noticed is kind of taking a little while to get some of the ballot returns in. We're like, okay, let's hope that those ballot returns are going to push things in our direction. But of course, the sheer size of some of these large counties like Multnomah and Lane, it's hard to offset that with a really, really good result from Umatilla. What's your take on what's happened with the governor's race?
Well, I'm praying that with Clackamas still coming in, that maybe there'll be enough in there to shift this. But I did a little math, and if 1,350 people in every county, if 1,350 more Republicans voted in every county, we would not be in this position right now. 1,350. And I can tell you in Umatilla County, so I was looking at the stats, of course, like all of us were today, and it showed 75% of the Republican base turned out statewide. Well, Umatilla County was over 76%. So and to David's point, he said, you know what, people that didn't vote. Okay, I have 112 people that didn't vote for a governor, that was an undervote, so in Umatilla County. And it makes me sick that right now we're not going, Drazen won. It makes me sick. And at the same time, here in Umatilla County, and I also know across the state, I cannot say everywhere, but I can say that the ORP was pulling out a lot of stops and doing a lot of things to help win this race. And I know for Umatilla County, we did actions that we've never done before to help have a better turnout. County-wide mailing and texting, and our PCPs did it instead of paying somebody. And of course, all the door-to-door, the phone calls. And now I think, and I'd like to hear what you think on this, Kevin, is we need to chase those challenge ballots, that they're signatures. I don't know if that's enough to make a difference.
So statewide, we don't know yet. There were a lot of by challenge ballots. I think, well, there's a couple of things. There's going to be signature rejections that have to be rehabilitated. There's a lot of them in Clackamas County because they actually did the job of checking the signatures, which brings into question why we don't have as many in places like Lane, Washington, and Multnomah, where, as I understand it, they use an automated system, a artificial intelligence system, probably made by somebody like Google, who just loves Republicans, and so I think that those are going to be important, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to change the outcome of the election, because when a signature doesn't match, there's a whole bunch of reasons, like the automated automatic voter registration based on a driver's license signature, which could be 10 years old. That kind of stuff might be the result of that. But that's the only thing that ties a person to a piece of paper called a ballot. So if you don't, compare those two, then you got to ask, well, I wonder how many people's signatures might not really have matched in Multnomah and Washington. I don't know. Or Lane. There's a lot of things that we can talk about on the election integrity side, but challenge ballots, that may be something that we're going to proceed with. We can talk about that some more in some detail here before we conclude, but I know that it's going to matter. Many of these things are going to matter in some of the state legislative races, because there's a whole bunch of close races right now. Close enough that as well, and it's eastern part of Multnomah County, like Gresham and East County, Portland, that area, and also Clackamas. There's several districts in Clackamas, including a state Senate race that is razor thin right now. And both counties are still bringing in ballots. Clackamas announced, because of, in part, the signature verification that they were actually bothering to do today, about 15 minutes ago, they were going to be reporting in the latest, greatest report. So I'll watch that here on the side and see what shifts in the numbers. Those are legislative races that, in the case of 4 of them, if they were to actually shift to Republican based on the returns coming in, we could see something much closer to an even House and a Senate that could be tied, which would be, that this might be a pipe dream, because we know that usually election results just get better after Election Day for Democrats. Somehow ballots are found all over the place.
Now that we have election week, thanks to Democrats.
Yeah, and the mailman is now a ballot drop-off guy, so he's going to be delivering ballots for the next week.
It better have a postmark.
It's supposed to be. That's what the law says. But then Shmiya said, "Poof, go away. We don't care about that law. We like this law better." Yeah.
I heard something. Sorry, Don. I heard something interesting. Someone asked the question or proposed or posited that postage paid envelopes are not date stamped when they're postmarked. Is that correct? Or not time stamped? Or time date stamped? Or I don't know.
They don't have. I don't think they have the traditional postmark. But what a lot of them have is, just to give you an example, if you can see this on here,
a barcode.
That's a postal indicator, which that barcode actually does represent processing by the post office, and I believe it contains some sort of reference to date that is evidence that it was processed. And so it's either that or the thing that we traditionally see on mail that would go, here, I'll do a little advertisement for the David Horowitz Foundation, another politically. So there would be something over that in some instances too. And it's supposed to be there, because if something shows up during the ensuing days after Election Day and you don't have any postal indicator on there, how the hell can you prove that it was actually mailed on Election Day or earlier, before 8 p.m.? You can't. No. So, but that's how laws work in Oregon. And then we sent them to the courts, and then Kate Brown, who appointed like 70% of the judges, and soon all of the state Supreme Court justices, can just make laws that don't work for the Democrat Party just go bye-bye. So, I mean, that's my opinion. Maybe we'll bring on some lawyers sometime when we'll talk about exactly what they do in the court system. But I don't remember how a time when we saw so many different laws over the past 2 or 3 years just be nullified. That we thought, hey, didn't the people's elected representatives pass those things and the governor signed them? But we're going to keep fighting. So Don, it's interesting. So of course you're up in Washington State, and we're watching the big races up there. You're watching what's going on down here. What's your perspective on what's happening, and what should we know about what's happening up in Washington State there?
Yeah, well, it's probably very very, very similar. Can you hear
You mean
me?
the impression of what's going on and the razor's edge of everything?
Right. Yeah. So I saw an interesting article that I thought really had some good insight. And the insight was this: you look at how terrible things are, and you can name the topic, right? Historically, if you had, high unemployment, high interest rates, high inflation, the issues at the border, the stuff you see downtown, the crime. I mean, you name it. Then the people who were in charge when that happened would be put out of office. Pretty much what happens. Yes, there has been a swing nationally towards the Republicans, but given all of that, you would have expected a much bigger swing. This person's research, now this was national, this wasn't in the Northwest, but I think it would apply, was that the Generation X pretty much voted overwhelmingly to the left. And the reason for that is these are people who don't have life experience yet, and they're fresh out of commie school, whether it be,
You mean Gen Z? Because I'm Gen X. I think you mean Gen Z.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Gen Z. Yeah.
Gen X, we're the good guys. We still want to have, we grew up under Ronald Reagan. I was like, whoa. No, Gen Z. Yeah, you got it.
When you get my age, it all kind of runs together, my friend.
Yeah.
But
Gen Z is a piece of work.
They're fresh out of communist re-education camp, and it hasn't been hit with life experience yet, and they're voting that way. And so this person's read was, essentially that's what we're up against. And I'm going to guess that was probably the case here as well. And the bottom line is we're into a multi-generational war. We have to think of this like the folks that were Roe v. Wade. It took them 50 years, right? And a lot of people who started that fight weren't even around to see the finish. And that's probably going to be the case for us. We're going to have to start a fight that our kids and grandkids are probably going to have to finish. And I don't think we can think of necessarily victory or defeat in terms of each individual election. It's all about moving the needle. And if you look at what was able to be accomplished, yeah,
I was going to say,
like
it's interesting you mentioned that, John, because I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you. I think we're in the middle of a process that's still going on, right? Look at the Hispanic vote and how it's shifted. It's not done shifting. That's for sure. All these folks that are that were working class voters, some of them are still probably voting for Democrats and bought some of these ads, right? Like, oh yeah, Tina Kotek, she's going to fight homelessness. What? She caused it, but they don't know that because they don't watch those news shows. But I think that the working class folks that actually are going to have to pay for all this stuff are shifting. And then, as you said, you got the communist education camp, Gen Z. I think they are going to find out just how expensive it is to have to pay for all the debt that's being racked up doing all this crap, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the problem is as Don puts it, the communist indoctrination camps we call the public school system. Sorry to the public school teachers out there who vote Republican, but basically that's what we're dealing with. They don't teach any kind of fiscal liability to this younger generation. As far as they know, the government makes money, has all the money, and the government pays for it. You know what I'm saying? And if I had a dollar for every time I heard that, I could go out and have a nice dinner. The government pays for it. Well, no, not really, because the government's not in business. The government confiscates every dime the government spends. It confiscates from somebody else, and young kids just don't seem to get that.
That's a good lead in to one of the big results from this election. At least we think it might be the result. Media has called it, and the Democrat media has called it Measure 114. They say that it's going to pass. It was very narrow. It's like 3%. So look back at the final result here of that one, but it's close. Measure 114 essentially subjects your gun rights, your ability to purchase a firearm for your own protection, to a fee and a training course. And it limits the size of magazines so that you can run out of bullets sooner when you're assaulted by multiple assailants. ladies, and then but it passed very narrowly. And you just reminded me of something I just saw the other week. I think it was a school in Lake Oswego area that Grant. It was Grant High School, and they had kids that went out and marched in favor of yes on Measure 114. And I'm like, there's no chance that those kids had ever had to think through what effect Measure 114 would have on reducing so-called gun violence, not caused by guns, because they don't even think about who commits this violence. It's criminals, right? Criminals are not going to follow this law. So, but there are people who are going to be impacted by this law, and there are people who try to defend themselves. They've never had to think this through. They've been told by their teachers, you can stop school mass shootings by supporting this. And it's complete nonsense. And it only took that chunk of Gen Z to do what you just said and maybe help pass something that's completely inane, absurd, right? And it may not be constitutional, by the way. So I think we're all expecting that it'll be challenged.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand that the NRA is going to be challenging this measure, and I don't think it is constitutional. I'm certainly not a constitutional scholar by any means, but it's portions of it. You're not going to be able to do anything. But since it's dependent upon funding of the legislation, and if the legislation never funds it, therefore you don't have it, and you now barring anybody from getting a firearm again, then that is unconstitutional. And I was talking with a friend of mine today who was over at a local gun shop, and they said, we're going to be out of business. That bill has now killed our business.
That is actually what we got Sonny, you and I got a presentation at the last state central committee meeting for the Republican Party in the Dalles from somebody who said essentially it will drive retail gun sales stores out of business in the state of Oregon, which essentially means that the only people who can get guns are ones that you buy from other people that already have them, or you can do what the people doing meth and tents do and just buy a legal gun, right?
You can buy them.
I'm a law-abiding. Yeah, exactly. Since I'm a law-abiding citizen, I don't intend to do that. So I will be the one denied the ability to purchase a firearm. But the people doing meth and tents that are doing these shootings, they're fine.
Yeah.
But,
and
but
also
to your point,
there's.
Go
ahead, Don.
I was going to say, but to Kevin's point, what they're going to cause is people to be, it's just like outrageous taxes. When you have super high taxes, you cause people to become, tax flaws, basically. They start becoming tax evaders and breaking the law because the law is an unjust law. And that's what's going to happen here. People are just going to go on the black market and, you can always get a gun, right? That is like really easy to do. And people are going to get them anyway, right? So that's what they're creating. They're going to turn us into people who are lawbreakers is what they're going to do. And of course, the entire purpose is to run gun stores out of business. That's the objective in the first place.
That's the objective, yeah.
That is the objective.
And to leave us defenseless, right? Because if you call the police or the sheriff in many places in the state, we interviewed a guy who I think is actually going to win his seat for, West County, Lane County Commission. And Ryan Senega, and he said that he learned from one of his constituents who called when his shop was broken into from the one patrol car in the Lane County Sheriff's Office that covered this entire area, that the response time was going to be 3 hours. 3 hours. So you think people are just going to sit there and say, I think I'll just get shot. I don't care. Come on. That's absurd. No one's going to sit around and wait for 3 hours. For law enforcement shows up 3 hours later. That is just to investigate what happened to the body. It is
Absolutely.
not responsive, policing. And then in Portland, they might not show up at all, or they might show up 90 minutes later. We're in the middle of a crime wave with police response, sheriff's response at its lowest that we've seen in recent decades, and they want to disarm law-abiding citizens. It's
Yeah.
insane.
So we have a comment here that says, "Thank goodness Douglas County Sheriff John Hanlon won't be enforcing unconstitutional laws such as 114." Really?
Well, that is very interesting. And sheriffs have a lot of power at their discretion. I imagine this one will be tested in court to some great degree, but I'm not terribly unhappy to hear that maybe somebody is going to stand up to unconstitutional laws.
I'm absolutely elated because non-compliance is the only way to stop this. I know, maybe I'm just an outlaw and I have some, well, I guess I do have a healthy disrespect for government authority. But, but I don't, and I guess you could use this in the court of law. I don't comply with these laws. I don't go out and kill people with my guns, but if I want to buy a gun from somebody in the parking lot of Fred Meyer, I'm going to buy a gun from somebody in the parking lot of Fred Meyer. And screw your freaking laws that tell me I have to go get that thing, transferred. And what's going to happen, I could see sheriffs, and I could see a lot of sheriffs, because a lot of sheriffs came out against this. I can see sheriffs not enforcing the finer points of 114. I can see them looking at a 30-round magazine and going, screw that, I don't care. But unfortunately, what's going to happen again, we go back to the gun shops, is the state police are going to intervene. And, you're not going to be able to run your background check. So,
yep.
I'm not sure what the gun stores are going to do other than just go out of business. I'm not sure how they get through this. Not sure how long it's going to take, for the courts to nullify the law because it's unconstitutional. But man, there's a lot of people out there, and I don't think they'll be closing their doors with any inventory, because I'm guessing the gun stores are very busy today. And will be
January 1st, right?
30 days. Yeah.
To your point, David,
Merry Christmas.
I saw one on Facebook today that had like 50% off in their entire gun store online, or not online, but their store that's here in Oregon. They that business made a Facebook post clearing inventory, because this is it.
Yeah. I mean, Santa's going to be delivering a lot of firearms this Christmas, I think, very clearly, and probably some ammo. And bottom line is, you can't ask.
Ignoring. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
David's comment about ignoring unjust laws. You're in great company, though. We have a moral duty to ignore unjust law. And people like St. Thomas Aquinas, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, they all, were in support of that. If the law is unjust, then just ignore it. And I think that's the right thing to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, the law can't tell you that you have to just sit there and die if there's criminals coming after you. And that's why the Second Amendment is protecting a natural right, not one that government granted you and therefore can curtail or take away as they see fit, but one that it is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution because you're supposed to have the ability to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And yet they say they've passed 114 because they're going to go ahead and stop criminals from committing crimes who don't follow laws. Just the dumbest thing ever. If somebody walked into one of these schools and said, "Hey kids, do criminals follow laws?" No. Okay. So this law, are they going to follow that? No. Well, what's this law going to do to stop people who commit crimes like school shootings? It's going to be this type of thing. But okay, we're going to have to go through this process, and as you mentioned, probably a legal process as well. So 114 is big news because I think the rest of the country is going to watch what we do, because the worst ideas in the United States and perhaps the world like to get their start here in Oregon and then spread across the country. Almost like a virus, right?
Right.
A mind virus. So we had a couple other measures that one is still, I think, up in the air. It's Measure 111 that supposed to make healthcare right, and I believe it's probably just going to lead to some litigation as to how such a thing. And they actually said they knew it would. They're like, oh, good, yeah, we'll have some litigation then. But it is right now, Measure 111. The yes vote is ahead 50.27 to 49.73. And the problem is, if multiple votes are coming in, yeah, it has. It was losing almost all until now.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And that will bankrupt the state. I mean, that'll raise
the state. Yes.
Yeah, that'll raise taxes on upper income people, state income taxes, to almost 18%.
Yeah, it'll double the amount of money the state has to spend if it does a single payer, which is what they want.
Yeah, that's exactly where it leads.
And then the other thing is, in the short run, it'll probably bankrupt the existing healthcare system. The hospital's already losing billions of dollars. What do you think's going to happen when you suddenly say, everybody has a right, go on and get some? How many of us have had doctors or know people who have had doctors that retired in the last couple of years? How hard is it to get a specialist appointment today when you already have insurance? Right.
Yeah.
So this is going to make that worse. No one was told that in the battle over this, but even John Kitzhaber, the pioneer of government healthcare, said it was a bad idea. Well,
yeah, and so when you add all of this along with Tina Kotek, it's really bad.
Yeah, she's like an amplifier. She's a force multiplier for bad policy, because every single piece of bad policy that Oregon has suffered from for nearly a decade only came to a governor's desk because of her. So she's got her finger in every piece of bad policy Oregon has experienced.
But I do have some great news. Measure 110 passed, which means we finally banned slavery in the state of Oregon. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, in small print, it will dramatically increase the cost of jails. Make it we have to pay all the prisoners for doing work that they do now and we'll give them all PERS. They'll get paid vacation leave. They'll be able to unionize, and the Democrats will eventually figure out how to get it so they can vote. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be making Davis bacon, right? Because they're working on a government project.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's going to be a boon for people going into prison. I mean, if a guy finds out he can make, $37 an hour being a flagger, or $32 an hour picking up garbage on the side of the road, there you go.
The only positive side I can see to this is that some of these guys that are getting clemency from Kate Brown, they might start rejecting it, or they might commit new crimes so they can go back in and make $37 an hour in jail.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, the irony is awesome. So the party that started slavery is ending slavery.
Yeah. Well, they're actually just more interested in seeing if they can bankrupt the jail system too, because let's remember, this is the jail system today that is having to release people because they don't have enough jail cells in the middle of a crime wave. And what they're going to do is they're going to make that system dramatically more expensive, because the people that are in the jail system won't do the work to make sure that the system actually can support itself. So, because it will make prison work essentially illegal. It'll take a while for it to be adjudicated, but we already know from Colorado how it's going to work out. Colorado did this, and all the things I just mentioned are exactly what happened. Plus, apparently, some $5 billion in back wages had to be paid. It is. I know. This is a beauty. Measure 113.
Oh, man.
They've amended the Constitution here. It passed because people read it and said, yeah, I don't want, this and that. It's going to tell people in different districts who's allowed to be their state representative or state senator based on those people doing what the people in that district want that person to do, which is not agree to satisfy a quorum so that Democrats can pass anything they want. And even the Willamette Week came out against this one. But that's the power of ballot titles, isn't it? which is in
Yes,
the
it
hands
is.
of the Secretary of State and the Attorney General in the Department of Injustice here in Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was confusing ballot titles. I know psilocybin manufacturing and service centers, whatever they call them, was on, I think, just about every city and county ballot in the state. And a lot of them were worded oddly. And ours, I don't even know if it passed or not, because I really don't understand it. I mean, you read the ballot title, it says prohibits. You read the explanation, and it says allows. How does that even happen? I mean, who's responsible for printing that, one, on a ballot, and then two, on the explanation? I mean, I
All
don't
I can
understand.
say is the lesson everybody's going to learn 4 more times potentially here is the Measure 110 lesson. Because everybody knows that if Measure 110 were on this in this election, if it were up for a vote, it would have gone down massively in flames. People hate that thing now, and yet they voted for it 2 years ago, and it promised drug treatment by taxing cannabis sales. Oh, yay! That sounds nice. Oh, and this obscure class of drugs, which happened to be meth, heroin, fentanyl, etc. They essentially decriminalized them, and it led to a massive opioid explosion, and then people living in tents everywhere, right? And
From everywhere.
from everywhere, exactly, and all the crime that's exploded in the city. If you've had your catalytic converter stolen, you can partially thank Measure 110 for that wonderful experience, because it was only possible if you could get enough people doing enough opioids under no penalty of law with no treatment that was supposed to be funded by this thing and no compulsion to treatment. So they turned to a life of crime in your neighborhood. Yay! Good job. Well, each one of these is like a Measure 110 just waiting to happen.
Yeah, they are.
It is. We did have some actual good news, by the way, and I'm curious what you guys think of this. So, we were competitive in probably three different congressional districts. The fourth didn't turn out very well. That was Alex Garlados against Val Hoyle for the DeFazio seat, who retired after 17 terms. And then the sixth district is the new district, which is like southeast Washington County, Yamhill, and I think parts of Marion.
Yeah.
And
My house is in CD6. Used to be CD5.
Right. And that one is the Democrats up. They threw a ton of money into that. And she's at 49.9%. Andrea Salinas, Mike Erickson at 47.67%. So that one's probably inching toward being called, but we'll have to see. Right. There's still votes coming in. The district that we won, or looks like we're going to win, they're still saying it's too close to call, but it's 3.5% difference, which I guarantee you, if the parties were reversed on that one, they'd be calling that for Jamie McLeod Skinner. But Lori Chavez Dreamer looks like she's actually going to come out on top on that one.
Hooray!
Yay. That is huge, because we've had one seat out of 5 for 40 years?
Yep.
And now we'll have 2 seats out of 6. And Lori's I think she's a really strong candidate too. And so I know that hasn't been called yet, but I think we're feeling pretty good about that one.
Yeah.
And that was the Schrader seat. And Jamie McLeod Skinner is the Bernie Sanders progressive acolyte.
Yes.
And also not a very attractive candidate in many ways, I'll just say personally.
Yeah, I'm sorry to see that Mike Erickson in 6 is not pulling that out. Let's hope something else comes in to change the numbers. It's a very close race there. It's within a 1.5%.
4,500 votes right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
out of 197,110. So.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I'm looking at that new numbers on it, and it is a tight race here.
Well, as the former vice chair and former chair of the congressional district number 5 for the Oregon Republican Party, I'm quite happy to see Lori apparently taking that one back. It's been a while since CD5. It was in the 90s, I think, since CD5 was in Republican hands. So good. Glad to hear it. I mean, that's why I call it Oregon's red trickle. Certainly not a red wave, but certainly, we did pick up some seats. Picking up a CD seat is huge. And I know in some of the counties, like my county, had a 3% sales tax on the ballot to fund the police department, and that went down 4-1. So I'm pretty happy about that. The sheriff is not happy about that, but putting a sales tax on one of the poorest counties in the whole state just didn't make a whole lot of sense to a whole lot of people. And I know in Umatilla County, lots of counties, I think we had some good results. We had one kind of lefty county commissioner guy. He's a city councilor. He's not registered Democrat, but you're pretty sure that he is, and he lost handily to a Republican. So there's some upsides to this election at the local level. But I think there was a lot of hype about this red wave nationally, and I just it looks like we're going to get the House, but I'm not sure we're going to get the Senate. And I'm not sure we did that well in the governor's offices across the nation either. But we got some wins. So I think it was Suzanne Ellis Jones that said that we got some wins, we'll take it.
Yeah, and there's some actual good news out of Portland. Joanne Hardesty, the crypt keeper. Who was the pioneer of police defunding and expanding, decriminalizing things and expanding homelessness. She's done an excellent job at that. And people are actually pretty fed up with it. And so they elected Renee Gonzalez, who has campaigned against all those policies. And now
thank goodness.
It's great. And they're both Democrats, but people aren't running for these offices as a Republican. It's a nonpartisan race anyway.
No.
You look at Renee Gonzalez's background and the things he's saying, he could easily be a Republican just about anywhere else. But he is.
But all Democrats aren't radical. She was radical.
Oh,
yeah.
She's part of the whole, defund movement, and he's a common sense business guy. He wants Portland to succeed and to be improved upon. So I'm so glad he won, and she is gone down.
It'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to see some centrists once again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that could create a new coalition in Portland where they realize they have to stick together and do this. Now, there is some bad stuff that came out of Portland and Multnomah County. Portland voted for some charter reform, which is it's like the constitution of the city. And they just instituted a couple of reforms that are good, that pretty much are in line with what you see in the rest of the country. Like they're going to have districts. So they're going to have the mayor is now going to become more of the chief executive, and then the city council will become more of like the legislative body. But then that's where it goes downhill, and where it became controversial, and actually was again, Oregonian, Willamette Week all came out. The business committee all came out against this charter reform, and it creates two things: multi-member districts. So you can have one district and then one ballot, and multiple people can run, and you get the three vote getters that finish at the top. And if you can figure out who you actually voted for, they're going to use ranked choice voting, which is
that's the end of it there.
That's right. Which means that in those districts, you won't even have to have 25% of the vote in order to get elected to a city council position. So we're going to get rid of Joanne Hardesty, and I believe she's just going to try to come back under this new system. But there's more to that story, because in May, they're going to put on the ballot an alternative that would replace this, that people would like better. And I think that will pass, people just aren't aware of how bad some of this stuff is. It's almost like they have, well, this says poison on this, but come on, it smells really good. I'll bet it tastes good. All right, let's just see, and then when it doesn't work out, somebody says, we should ban poison. Okay, good. Sounds good.
One thing that I was
sorry.
really happy to see in Multnomah County was that the voters rejected non-citizens voting.
Yes. Now that is good news for Multnomah County. They did vote in ranked choice voting. So, it's like, okay, I guess most of the county is Portland. So who's surprised at that? But they did reject non-citizen voting. That is quite reassuring. So there's some good news.
That's a big step for a sanctuary city. You can. We won't turn you over to the feds, but hey, you're not going to have any say in the way we destroy our city or run our city. Excuse me.
So just in the remaining stuff that is going on, we're watching the state house and the state senate. I think there's a whole series of very close races in the state house. A few that are a little disappointing how close they were at all. There was the Kevin Mannix race where he ran against the convicted felon who hired a convicted child rapist or assault person to be his field operator. Well, that guy did lose, but amazingly, 45.56% of District 21 actually voted for the felon. So we got some work to do. Kevin Mannix, the opposite of that. He is the guy who writes the laws that actually make sure that people that do things like Mr. Navarro and others spend mandatory time in prison, like Measure 11. So we've got work to do, but actually that's good news. Okay, a win is a win, right?
Yeah.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Kevin's in there,
Yeah.
I'm very happy he won.
I'd like to give a big shout out to Jo Rae Perkins, who after a decade of running for offices, which she is mostly unqualified to hold, she finally broke 40%.
That's quite an achievement. I know. She even got Ron Wyden actually ran a negative ad against her.
I heard it. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I saw the ad. I saw a couple and it was on Sunday morning, watching K2, Your Voice, Your Vote, which is what I like to watch. And there we are. And I went, oh, yeah, well, they're running the recycle ad of her being in the QAnon. I think that's the same ad they ran last time. Don't hold me to it, but it kind of looked familiar.
Berkeley out and put Wyden in, and then
yes.
By the way, there are some additional races that it looks like Brian Stout won District 31. That is a D converted to an R. That's like Columbia County, part of Washington County. District 32 out on the coast, Clatsop County. That is Cyrus Yavadi. It looks like he's eking out a win. It's only about a 600 vote margin. That's good. As I scan through, so there's some. Adam Baker is like less than 300 votes behind the Democrat Anessa Hartman in District 40. So we'll see where that goes, because that's one of those districts that could be affected by the returns still coming in. Let's see. So John Masterman, heroic effort. He's a bit maybe too far behind, although that's only 600 votes out of 17,000 behind the Democrat in District 48. There's another very close race, Randy Lauer against Zach Hudson. Some of these districts, by the way, you could tell they were close because the Democrats started running negative ads, pounding the largely Republican, and that District 49 was one of those, and that's only a 400 vote margin right now.
Tracy Kramer managed to eke out a win in HD 22, which it was always in CD5 was always a problem district for me. Of course, it's been redistricted a little bit, but it's the district, before it was redistricted, it was the district with the least amount of voter registration and the least amount of voter turnout. And we ran good well-funded candidates in HD 22 for a decade, and I was elated to see that we finally flipped that.
Well, and it turns out that she was running against a Democrat who's Hispanic, and it's a 50% Hispanic district after redistricting, which should have been technically more Democrat, but she's won it. And I think this might be part of the realignment stuff that we're seeing, that Latinos are waking up and realizing, no, I don't want to live in a place full of crime and meth and tents and all that kind of stuff. I just don't. I want an education system that works, not this crap that finishes near the bottom of the country. And so, yeah, that's a huge thing. Congratulations to Tracy. There was a close race that was a sleeper race, District 50, and it's actually still pretty close. It's only about 400 votes. Ricky Ruiz versus Amelia Salvador, 50.8% to 48.9%. It's very close. And that was not a race that was targeted with money and all that stuff. It was so, golly, I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but you begin. Now, here's one guy that we've had.
That one's 400 votes.
I know.
Yeah.
If it draws closer with more election returns, then you may see people going around trying to make sure that people whose signatures mismatched get remedied within a 21-day window. So it's not over. Jeff Helfrich, congratulations, Jeff. We've had him on the program twice. I've interviewed him. He was a police officer in the city of Portland for like 25 years, and then he ran for state representative and lost by like dozens of votes in 2020, and he's ahead. He's ahead 51% to 48%, basically.
900 votes.
Yeah, and I think that's starting to get into the territory of, I think he's going to pull it off, and that has, I believe, Hood River in that district, Hood River County, which is kind of blue. And so, congratulations, Jeff. We certainly hope that this result holds, because we need people who understand law enforcement in the State House of Representatives, for sure. So we don't have people that are in there making laws that don't work for people who are in law enforcement, who are there to protect us. They're not a bunch of racists there trying to kill all of us, is what we've heard from some of the people that seem to run things in Salem. Michael Sipe, 49.56%. Emerson Levy, 50.33%. That is a 300 vote margin. 53rd district. I mean, all these close races are a lesson to anybody who thought that their vote doesn't matter.
No kidding. Yeah. Still time to get your vote in, folks.
Yeah, you don't need a postmark, so just get it in. I know. We're joking, but maybe the Democrats aren't. Maybe they aren't joking. I don't know.
They're probably not joking, Kevin. They probably. I mean, I'm not I think my wife calls me the only conservative who's not deeply attribute all of our losses deeply to fraud. But I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. They will do anything to win. So
I think so. Now, Raquel Moore Green, 10th district, didn't win. But District 11, Kim Thatcher, kind of cruised to re-election here. And we definitely need her in the state Senate.
Well, Bill Kinnemer is still neck and neck, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's the next one I was going to mention, and that one is the one everybody is watching. We're kind of on a razor's edge as far as what the outcome of the state Senate's going to be, and only half of the state Senate is up every 2 years for 4-year terms, and so it's a little bit harder to change the state Senate. Now, Daniel Bonham won in the 26th district. So that's good news. But the Kennemer Mark Meek district, I don't know if we talked about that on the show last week. I might have missed that, but they spent the total amount of spend in that district, $4 million. They spent $4 million for a state Senate race.
For a Senate race. Wow.
State Senate, which $4 million used to be what you would spend in a competitive congressional seat here.
Yeah, CD race. Yeah.
Wow. So Kennemer is behind by it looks like 225 votes, approximately 225 votes, but it's Clackamas, and Clackamas is still processing ballots. There was that delay. We'll have to see if it drops some more, but this is where we are looking at what could happen to the state Senate. We're getting up in a tie, which, we're not going to turn that down, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No, just getting rid of the supermajority is huge. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, that can be stopped when the Democrats are not in the supermajority. I mean, they bowled over us the last couple sessions because they could.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's right. We need balance in Salem. We might, a tie is balance by definition. So
it is.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure how relevant the Oregon legislature will be now that Kotek is in the governor's office. I mean, she's been running the whole building in Salem for a decade. I don't think she needs a legislature. And I don't think there's very many Democrats within that building that are willing to assert themselves. So she just might be running the whole show.
Yeah. And also, we've got a court system that's essentially ruled that the governor is an all-powerful dictator who can issue executive orders for endless periods of time for any reason they want. Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. Exactly.
Carte blanche. Yeah. I mean, she's feared too. I mean, everybody in the building is scared to death of her. I mean, that was one of the points that I tried to make during the campaign season is if you put the Speaker of the House in the governor's office, who ruled the supermajority with an iron fist, I'm pretty sure that the legislature is going to become no longer needed, and she can put forth her entire agenda. Where that agenda comes from, it's probably the same place it comes from all the other far left governors, mayors, and what have you across the country. Because we tend to see the same agenda pop up in state houses during this, the same year and in the same sessions across state houses across the nation. And so it's not emanating from a lot of these people. It's a national or perhaps a global agenda that seems to be executed by these people.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we've had a little bit extended show here today because we didn't have one yesterday and we wanted to cover all the election results today. But I think we might, when we come back with another show, maybe we want to hop, skip, and jump through some of these local. I'm sure there's some things out in Eastern Oregon, Sunny, that you could talk about that are noteworthy and interesting. We've learned a lot about the power of school boards, city councils, county commissions over these past few years. And there's quite a few things that have happened. One positive thing is that there's a judge, we had the whole thing with Vance Day running for appeals court. Well, there's actually a circuit court position that was won by somebody I happen to know is a Republican. Her name's Amy Queen, and she's tough on crime. And so every once in a while, these little gems happen in there, and it's great. And so we can take more time to walk through this because some of those local offices, they're the things that will really affect your life. They're the ones that decide whether you have a paved road or not, or whether your kids even get to go to school, or have a school that has been turned into a woke training center for what did we call them earlier? Marxist education indoctrination centers or something. Yep. So,
yep.
Last thing to mention, Don, you were up in the Vancouver area, right? So, Congressional District 3. What's happening with that? What's the latest? Because I don't have it up here on my screen, but you were talking about what you thought was the case with that race. Joe Kent, right?
Yeah, Joe Kent, right. Exactly. So it's last I checked, they were like about 3 or 4 percentage points apart, and the Democrat was ahead, but almost the vast majority of that we think is Clark County. All the other counties lean towards the conservative, and we don't think that those numbers have come in yet. So I think that's we still have yet to be seen what's going to happen with that. So it's kind of shocking that it'd be close at all, given the nature of the other candidate. But having said that, we think that still has ways to run yet before we call it one way or the other. So,
we'll be watching that one too. Every member of Congress affects all of us, not just their constituents and how they vote. And we know there's a lot of, so we could spend another hour just talking about John Fetterman and and what's happening in Georgia. There's going to be a runoff.
That was the first thing I saw this morning when I woke up, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, what in the world is wrong with Pennsylvanians?
My respect for Pennsylvanians has collapsed here.
I am utterly speechless.
They should have actually had like Mr. Magoo, a cartoon character, run.
Well, they did in 2020, and they voted for him. His name's Biden.
Yeah,
really no
that's good.
There's literally no difference between the guys. I watched a little bit of that debate, and take your mind off the policy stuff, just the capacity to function. And it's unbelievable you vote for somebody who doesn't have the capacity to function.
Yeah, and that seems very uncompassionate. I mean, the guy doesn't need a stressful job. The guy should be doing everything he can to recover from that.
Word is, this is the rumor I heard from people that are connected with the national stuff that goes on, and he's probably going to get in there and then come up with some excuse to resign, and that his wife will be appointed to replace him. The wife who's probably guilty of elder abuse, but then they'll have a special election in 2 years, and Democrats don't care. They like 2 more years, we'll take it. Just like getting Raphael Warnock elected. Okay, we don't care. Just get him in there. 2 years, we can control the Senate. We can pass all this crap that we've seen, and have the vice president cast a tiebreaker. They just don't care.
No, they don't. It's all about the Great Reset, quite frankly. I mean, it's take America in another direction, and we have to continue fighting against that.
Yeah. Yeah, what is it? The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and we're gonna have to pay that price here in the coming couple of years for sure. Anything else that anyone wants to mention about that? I mean, obviously we know that Florida is no longer a swing state, nor is Ohio for that matter. Which everybody tells you we got to get rid of the Electoral College because it's always the same states. It's like, well, no, it's not Florida and Ohio anymore. I was glad to see that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have the rest of election week to parse out what happened in Oregon and what happened across the nation.
Yep. So we'll be back on Friday with another episode of The Captive Audience. Once again, thank you to the ensemble cast here of Captive Audience. This is fun. We'll have to do it again. And we'll have to.
It's fun.
We'll have to come up with another reason to do this other than election night, because that'll be 2 years from now. So, thanks everyone for joining here tonight, and thanks everyone for watching us. And please do share the show with everyone you can: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Telegram. And we'll keep bringing this news that you can't, and opinion you really can't find anywhere else in the state, streamed live out here on social media. So in Oregon. Thanks, and we'll see you on Friday. Good night, everyone.